Presenting The Art of Not Giving a Fuck with Garrett Dawn.
Welcome to the Art of NGF podcast. Will Griffin here. We've got Garrett Dawn and Daisy Campbell joining us tonight. Daisy, or I should say Daisy Eris Campbell, is can be seen as a woman of many stories. She's actor, writer, director, producer, organizer of festivals, transpersonal psychologist, heirophant, psychopomp, collaborator with the Justified Ancients of Mumu, a.k.a. the KLF, conduit for the ingression of novelty, wrangler of something from nothing, and strange attractor for the cosmically enthused. Would that be a fair description, Daisy?
Wow, it's the best introduction I've ever had. Yes.
So
yeah,
I think
what was the conduit one? I like the conduit one. What was that
conduit
about?
for the ingression of novelty. You like that?
Yes, very good. Very good.
So this all kind of came about through a very long series of coincidences, but I think perhaps the beginning of them for me maybe was back, and you're going to have to refresh my memory, Daisy, about when this was in terms of years and stuff. But
I'm hopeless on years. Everything just blends into a great green light substance. So, the history, I'm not. Yeah, the actual dates of things. No, I'm not very good at that. But go on, hit me. I'll see.
Okay. At some point in the past, I think was you staged like a thoroughly unhinged version of the play, The Warp, at the Drome under the tunnels in London Bridge.
Yeah, that's right. So that would have been, well, my daughter was just born, so that's one of the things I can date, and she's just turned 19. So 19 years ago that was. Yeah. And it was the world's longest play, the 24-hour long legendary The Warp, which was it was written by Neil Oram, and originally back in sort of the late 70s, it had been directed by my dad, Ken Campbell, and I played the baby by all accounts. And then we came full cycle because my daughter then played the baby in my production of it. All those years later, which was a nice little thing. But yeah, it's an extraordinary piece. It's kind of my dad used to call it acid archers. It's sort of it's the UK Kerouac in a way. It's the stuff we didn't get in the 60s of the birth of our counterculture and what was going on with that scene in this country as opposed to in the States. And so thankfully Neil Oram, with his extraordinary memory, was able to put together this 24-hour long shaggy tale of drugs and sex and Scientology and Bohemia and the early beatniks morphing into the kind of hippie movement, and then off to live on a commune in Inverness, and various gurus and freaks coming out of the woodwork everywhere you looked, and basically all based on his life, really slightly fictionalized, but not much. And there was a cast of there was about 40 actors in it, but there was a cast of maybe 300 characters or something, so everyone would kind of take maybe 10 to 12 parts each, except for the lead man who would play who would be in every single scene except 2, and they were short ones. So it was an epic, extraordinary thing. And when we did it under the Drome, which is when sounds like you saw it, it had been sort of taken up by Fraser Clark, who was the Megatripolis guy, and sort of become part of his whole sort of, what does he call it, multiversity idea, the idea of edutainment. I think he coined that phrase, edutainment, and was the first person that I'm aware of who was, at least in the UK, who was doing who was really trying to bring talks and theatre and film and all of these things to the kind of rave culture and to into a kind of context that had previously just been music. So yeah, it was great fun to be in. It was great fun. It was so much fun.
I kind of remember it as being sort of like cross between a rave and like immersive theatre kind of thing. Like you weren't sure if the person you were talking to was playing a role or themselves, or and then you see them again and they were different, and you weren't sure, were they playing a role before and now it's really them now, or was it the
That
other
may
way?
have been the drugs, Will, to be fair.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I mean, it wasn't that immersive, to be honest. Not like we think of immersive theatre now with the likes of Punch Drunk doing what they're doing and stuff. I mean, it was, you know, a fairly straight, it was, you know, it's fully scripted. Everyone had to learn their lines, and they, you know, there were costumes and sets and props. It's just that it was so extraordinarily long that you kind of had to stage it in a way that didn't make, you know, that you didn't have to sit around waiting for endless scene changes. So the way we staged it, if you imagine a huge sort of warehouse room, there were stage sets all the way around the room, and so the actors would be constantly crossing through the middle of the audience, so the audience were all sat on the floor in the middle, just kind of turning and twisting to kind of follow where the action was. And then sometimes the action, you know, when we went to sort of visit Bhagwan, Sri Rajneesh, suddenly everyone was in Pune and we were all doing ecstatic dance and got the whole audience up. And, you know, there were moments where it definitely merged, but also it was such a wild context to be doing it in, that often the non-actors would sort of burst into the fabric of the play, like the legendary breastfeeding woman who suddenly appeared in Rimmy's it's called Rimmy's Breakfast, this scene, and it's a guy tripping whilst eating a full English breakfast, and it was played by a different actor every time we did it, and the kind of the goal was to do the most outrageous things you could possibly think of to do with a full English breakfast, for about 10 minutes for the scene, and then that was it. Yeah, you know, so it was getting more and more outrageous, and suddenly this breastfeeding woman appeared without her child and just squirted milk all over this this guy's breakfast. I mean, and yeah, he won that. He won that one.
Sounds fair enough.
Yeah. So it was wonderfully wild, and you know, of course, as I'm sure you experienced, by the end of the play, those that had kind of more or less stuck with this. I mean, some people nipped off for a bit of a dance, and you know, there was a whole rave going on next door, and all sorts of other stuff going on as well in that particular venue. But you know, those who made it through the warp, there was no longer a distinction between audience and performers, and you know, an amazing community was forged in that time, because there's nothing like, you know, trying to do something impossible to bond people for life, really.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, you know, that blurring of boundaries from you know, participant to kind of voyeur, and the dissolution of that distinction. Because later on in your Cosmic Trigger play that you staged, I think it was 2014, the first one, wasn't it? And
yeah, 2014, and then again in 2017. Yeah.
So I went to one of the later ones in London in the Cockpit, and
right.
I don't know whether it was, you know, the venue, I think in the round, like that definitely helped, but it, you know, there was very much a sense that the audience were participants, wittingly or otherwise, and it was kind of clear there was more than performance going on, you know, like especially during the tantric alien sex scene.
Yes, yes, that packed a punch, didn't it? Yeah.
I mean, was that your intent, to that it was going to be some kind of something beyond a performance?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense that it was on one level a great big ritual, you know, and we actually had, I don't know if you remember, there was a mandala painted in the center of the stage, and like you say, it was staged completely in the round, so audience on all four sides, which absolutely added to this sense of all being in a, I don't know, almost like a cauldron together, or a great sort of you know, there's something very different when you can, as an audience member, look across and see other audience members. I think it takes you back to an older form of theatre somehow. But yeah, no, absolutely, there was a ritual intent to the whole thing, without, you know, hopefully ever taking itself too seriously, which is partly why I love Robert Anton Wilson, because he can go into those territories without ever losing a sense of humour.
Yeah,
That's what I
which
sort
is
of
kind of,
attempt to do.
yeah, it's the kind of the totem that protects you in a way, isn't it? Being able to laugh.
Exactly, banished with laughter. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's a necessity because they're otherwise you see where people head out into, they either grab a religion or they fetishize some kind of lifestyle, or they get really dark, and stay in the parents' basement, kind of like the stereotypical chaos magicians type thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
unless there's humor involved, I don't think people get very far down, through Chapel Perilous, let's say, or through.
I was just going to say Chapel Perilous. I'm glad you said that. Okay, yeah, we're on the same page. Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How do you emerge from Chapel Perilous without a sense of humor? Yeah, you can't. I don't think you can.
No, you just pulled right down, and for as long as it takes, really. I mean, but
Yeah.
well, something crazy about all this to me, and how it came about in relation to Will and I as well. I just want to give you the background and then see where, because I know you're going to have stuff that lines up with all of this. And number one is that the first TV show I ever saw in my life was Doctor Who. It was the Tom Baker years, but I know I saw other doctors, but it just happened to be at that time. It was on public television in the US, like at times when a little kid would watch, I guess. And then the first cassette tape I ever had, I have no idea why I bought it, how I knew about it. I must have had my mom get it or something, but it was the White Room, the KLF tape. And I don't know what I would thought of all that shit at that age. I mean, I had no context for any of it. Like, who are the Justified Ancients? What are these videos? And so then fast forward, Will and I go to Avebury. I think, correct me if I'm pronouncing the name wrong, Will.
No, that's right.
Go to
sounds right.
Cool. So we go to the Stone Circle there and everything. This was last, what was it, 2 years now, Will, or 1 year ago? Yeah, it was 1 year last year.
Last year.
Last summer. So a year ago last summer. And we happened to be in the UK on the August 23rd during the workshop. And that was the day when the 2023 book came out.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of amazing. And then later on, after I'd gotten back to the States, I messaged this group that Will and I are both part of, the Doctor in the TARDIS video.
Oh, yeah.
And that same exact night, I got a message from Will with the same link to the same video, and he had not seen my post yet. And he said, "Hey, check out 1 minute 26 seconds. They're driving the car right through by the pub in the Stone Circle where we sat."
Yes.
But of course, this is 20, 30 years, or whenever 20 years earlier, or 30 years earlier when they recorded that.
Yeah.
So that was bizarre. And the fourth thing relates to Will getting you and I on board for this, which was the first we talked about how every time we even discuss the KLF, all this weird shit starts happening. And then, so the fourth thing, he sent an email to me that he had sent to you. And at a little brief note at the end, he mentioned, and thanks for mentioning the Cathars thing. It really stood out, or whatever you said there, Will. So then I said, Will, I got to tell you this story. I stayed in Andorra over September, and we decided to go into France and Spain around there and look around. And we went to Montsegur. So I was like, this place was amazing. And my friend was there with me, Edwin, and he was, these people walked by me and I was like, "That's a beautiful day, huh?" And they were like, "This is up at the castle." And they were like, "Yeah, it is. We have so many memories here." And I could tell what they were hinting at. And I thought, I don't want to go into this with them. But that's cool. And I kind of left Edwin to stray over there. And then they ended up talking and saying they were his parents in a past life. And he had this whole, it was kind of finding of the Grail in a way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just bizarre, amazing experiences up there on that mountaintop. So I told Will the story, and he's just sitting there almost ready to explode to tell me he already knows the story of how the Cathars walked down into the fire.
Yeah.
And then he tells me about how you're connected with all this stuff. So that was, I don't think another year in the last 20 years have I thought about the Cathars very much. So
I know. I tell you, Gnosticism is back in a big way. It's popping up everywhere. It's quite interesting, actually.
Yeah.
And well, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? It's like, we've taken, and I suppose this is kind of the themes that my show explores in amongst other things, is, we've taken our narrative our human narrative to such a degree of fraught complexity that, you know, the idea that actually, you know, let in the pure nothing and just just look away from all this mattering so much for a while. It's very soothing. It's a very soothing doctrine I'm finding at the moment. I think any form of dualism is ultimately probably not the answer, but yeah, it feels good to focus on the nothing for a while, for sure.
How was it? How was your? So I'm told you went up there too, to the mountain, yeah?
Yeah. So I went. So my dad got really interested in the Cathars and Gnosticism and the Nag Hammadi lost gospels that told of the laughing Jesus, who actually hadn't been on the cross at all. Simon of Cyrene had in fact been the one not nailed up on the cross, and Jesus just couldn't help laughing when he realized that they'd got it all wrong. So that's the doctrine of the laughing Jesus. Anyway, that's by the by. And so my dad was sort of into all this stuff and I've still got all his books, wonderful books like Did the Virgin Mary Live and Die in England, and, you know, and all those, as well as the Holy Blood, Holy Grail stuff that you might be more, you know, familiar with. And so him and his great pal, Jeff Merrifield, and the late John Joyce, who was an actor who always worked with him, they created a trip, basically. So they, you know, a round trip where they were going to go to Rennes-le-Château, to Montségur, to the Swiss Alps, where I don't know if you recall this, it was sort of mid-90s, and 23 cult members all burned themselves to death with their feet pointing in, and it was thought that they were neo-Cathars who were, you know, because the Cathars believed that if you became parfait, the perfect ones, then you could reincarnate at will, hence your friend meeting. There's a lot of that about in Catharism, past lives, people who, you know, claim to have been able to reincarnate at will. And so there was this cult that had sort of hit the tabloids, so Dad was interested in that at the time. And then kind of as they were planning the trip, Jeff Merrifield happened upon this short news piece about the Italian community Damanhur.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know about Damanhur?
Yeah.
Right. So they added that onto their trip, and they became amongst the very well. I ended up tagging along, not for the whole of it, but for some of this trip, I tagged along, and I would have been 16. And Damanhur was utterly mind-blowing. I mean, it really is the eighth wonder of the world. You know, what they've created there is just the ultimate homage to the human spirit. It really is. It just shows what can be done if people work together and just put creativity above, and imagination and myth making above all else. It's an extraordinary place. And then Montségur, which was totally mystical and magical and just full of ghosts, wasn't it? Did you find it just extraordinary?
Yeah, it was amazing to stand inside.
So atmospheric, yeah.
Yeah, and we climbed up because there's no security up there, so we climbed up all around all the fences to the top of the castle and everything, and got the view. It was exceptional. Really, really an outstanding place. I could not believe it. Yeah,
no, it was extraordinary. Well, we went from Montségur, which was so beautiful and extraordinary and kind of, you know, desolate, and then off to Rennes-le-Château, where basically it seemed like all these authors had kind of moved there hoping to crack the puzzle of the Holy Grail. And there was all sorts of tales we were hearing of people's brakes being tampered with, and, you know, sort of suspect food poisoning things. And I mean, it was pretty wild there. I tell you, someone could write a brilliant soap opera set in Rennes-le-Château as all the conspiracy theorists try to find the secret of the Holy Grail. I mean, honestly, it was hilarious. So it was this extraordinary trip that was just the sublime to the ridiculous constantly, and it, you know, I was 16. It had a huge impact. It just had a huge impact on me, and so it became part of my of the show, that as I talk about sort of me and my dad, really. Although it becomes a lot more surreal than that.
Yeah, you talked about a lot about the theme of the storyteller and your endeavours to overwhelm the storyteller to see what might happen if the storyteller was to stop
Yes. Can you stop it? Yeah. Well, no. It's. Yeah. That's right. So it comes from this. I mean, it comes from all sorts of things, as you know, because that's sort of partly what the show's about. But my dad used to say, he went off and did this this documentary series, science documentary series, and he was interviewing all the top philosophers, and what they all more or less agreed on was that that no one's been able to find a self, and yet there's something in our brain that kind of threads together the events of our lives and gives the feeling of a self, but it's really more of a storyteller, and it's really more retrospective in a way. You know, events arise and we thread them in and make them meaningful, and we often just forget or leave out any of the anomalous stuff that doesn't sort of fit with the story that we're creating about our lives. And it sort of occurred to me, because I was schooled in story structure technique from such a young age, because my dad made me go on the Robert McKee story structure course when I was 11, and it was a long-standing obsession, the whole nature of story and story structure, that it occurred to me that it was well beyond just the fact that you might be able to craft a story. It pertains to your life. If you know how to set up a good story, and you've got a sense of whether you might be at the inciting incident or the third act climax, or whatever particular model you might be using, filtering things through, that life would probably just be forced to become more interesting. Do you know what I mean? Because you'd kind of make it so, just so it fitted. Whereas it would seem to me the opposite of a kind of more soap opera mentality, where it's very episodic. And then when I did my transpersonal psychology degree, it turns out there's a whole load of research into the fact that humans can be divided to some degree into those who view life in an episodic story format, and those who view life in a more mythic, arcing format. And actually, there's no evidence that either one is happier than the other, interestingly. But anyway, so that it all came, that whole idea of, can you create setups in your own life which you then almost force yourself to pay off?
This idea is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's and it really ties in with the idea of the victim to adventurer transition, and the idea of imagination training, Garrett.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's I mean, the imagination training, I think, is like a key to living a good life. I don't see how it's possible without it. And we all get, basically, my premise is that people think of imagination as a kid's toy. Like, it's like if someone's talking about imagination, it's like you're seeing an adult ride a little kid's bike or something. But the idea is that it's killed, it's dead, or that it's not used after school anymore, except by artists or creative types. But what I've noticed is that it's trained it's conditioned and trained in a really specific way to create stage plays inside our own minds, making us believe we're suffering when we're actually not. So you could be sitting in a beautiful day at a terrace somewhere and then feeling like shit because of the play going on in the mind, thinking, I'm just such a piece of shit. I should have said this, I should have said that, just not even present, not seeing what's going on at all, but playing around in the imagination and causing self-harm or the appearance of self-harm. That's my whole key. And then the only way to earn your access to the imagination is through becoming aware that the body actually is here. So becoming aware there's a body, living in it, breaking up some of the tensions and learning to be there with it and be okay. And then from there, it seems that the access to the imagination opens right up. And I think stuff like
that's interesting. Yeah.
The plays that you do and the storytelling, it's fascinating. I just took a business training course, and one of the core principles of it was telling stories. And the guy had designed something he called the Epiphany Bridge. And he's saying, so a customer's coming to the site, they have no reason to care about what you're selling or to send money, unless you start telling a story, you tell where you were at, then you have about an epiphany you had. And when it's told in a certain way, every good story contains these things. It brings the person to have your epiphany, at least enough of it, to where then they'll engage in what you're offering. So I'd imagine that's happening during your shows too.
It is, but also it's an incredibly potent tool for control, because we're now all so well versed in the basics of story structure, i.e. there will be increasing complexification, it's not even a word, is it? Complexity. There'll be increasing complexity, increasing difficulties, more obstacles, more tension, more anxiety, more difficulty, more tension, more anxiety, and then there'll be some kind of solution, and then there'll be a release. And
exactly.
so politicians can use that desire we have by just ramping up. Here's the anxiety, here's the difficulty, here's the fear, here's the enemy, here's the thing, here's the solution, and we'll kind of accept whatever you drop in there, provided it kind of conforms to our sense of how the story ought to unfold. And so actually there's also the really dangerous flip side of story, which is a bit like you're saying with the kind of sitting there not being able to appreciate what's going on, is that you just constantly going somewhere else. It'll be okay when, it'll be all right after that, and if I could just and you're reaching, and that's a sort of storytelling. So that's in the same way that you're talking about how the imagination can turn on you if it's not expressed or if it's not allowed. That's, as an aspect of imagination, the storyteller can equally turn on you.
In terms of
terrible stories,
in terms of methodologies as well, because once you kind of bring this dynamic that you're describing into your own awareness, then there becomes a whole range of options which open up. And for example, witnessing yourself as the character in the play of your own life and being able to enjoy what the character is experiencing as shitty from the point of view of reading the novel of your own life. Or,
yes,
totally. That's a big secret right there to enjoy.
It is. But I've stumbled upon another even weirder secret with all this, which I think my dad must have figured out as well. And it's that if you tell stories that are more or less true, but you maybe just bung in a few little lies or fabrications or amalgamated characters or certain things just to make the whole thing a better story, it all comes true. And it's a really weird thing. So and I mean, I've experienced this really powerfully with this particular one-woman show. I mean, literally, a made-up character, and I meet him, and in the story as I tell it, I meet him by the actual Justified Ancients of Moo ice cream van up in Liverpool. And when I meet the same guy, the actual character, at this party, having written and begun performing the show, we're standing next to an Indian takeaway ice cream van called Justified an Asian. I mean, literally. And then a lot of the story hinges on the fact that my dad's nose looked like a woman's arse, and so he goes on this quest to find the woman whose arse matches his nose, right? And I'd done my very first tryout show of Pigspurt's Daughter, and we were in the pub a couple of days later. Lots of the people who'd been at that tryout show were there, and this woman came up to me and said, "I just want to come and introduce myself. I knew your dad. I only met him once, but I met you when you were a young kid." And I said, "Oh, how did you know him?" And she said, "Well, I turned up. My friend was a photographer, and I happened to drop round. And they said, 'Oh, fantastic! Could you pose as just with your naked arse because we want to superimpose a woman's arse over Ken's face for the poster of Pigspurt.'" And I said, "What? So you're the woman whose arse matches my dad's nose?" I mean, and on, and I could go on and on and on and on, and now, and it's bizarre, but it relates to these artist choices, right? So I mean, this is a thing I've shared a few times, but it'll probably be new to you guys. So it starts with the three choices open to the artist. The first is to distract and entertain, which will ultimately deceive about the true nature of things, yeah? Or choice 2, you can pose as exposing wrongs, but in fact, you're just distracting and entertaining, and therefore you're just helping to sustain the status quo. Or choice 3, you can expose wrongs and bring about change, but it's not really that easy to do, because it's probably, they've probably got your name on a list if you're trying to do that or something. But then, according to my dad, there might be a 4th choice open to the artist. 4th choice, right, which is to pose as exposing wrongs, but in fact deceive, but with such a willful mix of truth and lie, research and fantasy, so inscrutably compounded as to send the status quo hunting for needles that nobody's lost in haystacks which don't exist, which will thereby distract from the ensuing release of hitherto imprisoned forces, which will bring about change, but of an unpredictable nature, right? And so that's what the warp was, that's what Cosmic Trigger was, that's what, they were choice 4. But then a couple of years back, we came upon choice 5, and it's an Alan Moore quote, of course, and it's, he says, to create a narrative so utterly complex and so endlessly self-referential that it becomes, to all intents and purposes, alive. And that has been what my experience has been really since doing Cosmic Trigger, is that the narrative is coming alive, and it's become, and everyone's off on their own stories, but there's a constant connecting up, and synchronicity is everywhere, to the point that I've sort of forgotten extraordinary synchronicities that was only told about yesterday, because they're sort of become mundane almost.
Exactly. That's a big switch right there. That's a huge milestone, is that what seems like luck and fortune and providence and all this is kind of like what is. If you actually, I think it's not that it wasn't happening before. I think it's that we weren't just again, weren't paying attention.
We couldn't tune to it. There's a line that I pinched from Antero Alley and used in Cosmic Trigger, which is, yesterday they called it coincidence, today they call it synchronicity, tomorrow they will call it skill.
Nice.
Which is great, isn't it? I mean, that just really sums it up. And that's kind of what I feel is rippling through this nascent community of countercultural freaks and outsiders, is the skill of synchronicity is being mastered. It's really interesting.
So do you feel like, do you ever have times where you sync? I know my teacher, or one of my main teachers, Dr. Hyatt, would call it Indra's net, where you've fallen into it, and that's all, everything's connected, all the synchronicities, and you're aware of it when it's going on, and then just as suddenly it's like it's as though it never existed. Have you, over the years, do you ever drop into sort of a mundane mindset or
it's daily, hourly. I've got kids and dogs and a garden.
Yes, okay.
Oh God, no, the mundane is, we swim in it, don't we? But it's interesting. John Higgs, the author, had a lovely line about this. He talks about it in terms of meaning, and that it's tidal, that there can be this kind of tsunami of meaning that releases. And actually, we came to posit that what is a cosmic, because there was a lot of question, when we were doing Cosmic Trigger, what is a cosmic trigger? Mm-hmm. And we decided it's the unleashing of a tsunami of meaning. Which, because you've unleashed it, you've got to kind of make sense of it. Yeah. But it will also recede, and suddenly the tide's out, and then there's not that much meaning around. And that that's much tougher. Meaning makes everything a hell of a lot easier, doesn't it?
Sure, of course. Yeah.
A lot fun.
But there are times like when I remember times I had very intense, and at the time I thought of them as negative mushroom trips, and then when I would get back to normality, or what I called normality at the time, I would feel like so grateful. I was like, oh yes, it's back, it's all back.
Yes.
So there are times like there's moments of repose, into the, okay, I'm just going to pay my bills and wash some dishes, and
I know. Well, I just received the Starman Tarot, the new it's the David DeAngelis Tarot that's based on the work he did for David Bowie. Mm-hmm. And it's so incredibly beautiful. And I pulled a card, and it said you need strategic rest And it was like so perfect, because for me, it's so restless and so completely unable to ever let myself rest.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's strategic rest, that's all right. that I can do.
You still get experience points for that part. Yeah, for that mission. Yeah.
And it turns out if you just add the word strategic to the beginning of almost anything, it just makes it seem a lot more palatable. So, yeah.
Reminds me of yet another synchronicity associated with this, which that performance that you did in the barn on the hill of Pigspurt's daughter, was particularly odd as well, because I'd only decided to go at sort of the last minute, and when I arrived, a guy who I'd been doing some work with for something completely unrelated months earlier was there, and I spoke to him, and it turns out it's his barn, and then and then it turns out that I start talking to him, and then he introduced me to his wife, who I'd met before, and it turns out she lived with you, and she knew Lee and Glenn, who I went over to the States to stay with Garrett, and Garrett happened to be living basically next door to Lee and Glenn on their land at the time when I went to visit. And it was, there's, I could go on, but it just gets dizzying after a while.
Yeah, it does. It's I often use the metaphor of the mycelium, the root structure of fungi, just because actually we're so networked. You're not always aware of the crossing points, but it is, like you were saying, Indra's net, isn't it? It's that connected up. It's no longer 6 degrees of separation. I feel like that's long gone. We're at 2 maximum now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, since you brought it up, Will, I wanted to mention too, Daisy, I don't know if you ever had contact with EJ Gold or any of that crew. They were around with Wilson.
Oh, no, okay.
American Book of the Dead, he wrote, and all that kind of
yes,
stuff.
of course. No, I never made contact with him.
Yeah, so he's like 70, he's like 76 or something now, but he's still here. I swear I stay in California near where those guys are. And there's another guy, Claude Needham. I'll see if I can send you a PDF.
Well, whereabouts is that? Where are you?
That's in Grass Valley, California.
I don't know, because I've been trying to. Well, trying is the wrong word. I've been awaiting signs and symbols to let me know the time is right to bring Cosmic Trigger to California. I mean, we'd been focused on Santa Cruz or San Francisco.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, San Fran is only a couple hours from here too.
Right. Okay. Yeah, but the thing is, it's finding the heads. I don't need to find the theatre people. I need to find the heads. That's who.
Totally.
That's what the play. That's who the play's for.
Yeah, well, maybe we can talk, outside of this context sometime. Yeah. We could possibly help with that and do some marketing around getting that to happen. That would be fun. I would be happy to participate. And then if you come out here, you should definitely connect up with Lee and Glenn, the Float folks. They were close with John Lilly. And then
I know, because Craig Ingalls, who lived with John for a long time, was when I first met Alia, who's the woman you're talking about, Will.
Yes.
Now Will's wife, other Will's wife. She was with Craig, and they'd lived with John Lilly for years, doing the float tank. In fact, he was his float tank installer.
Right. Yeah. So he's close with Lee and Glenn too. Then that's really
probably yeah. No doubt.
Wow. Yeah. So if you come out, then we'll arrange all that. And it would be fun for you to meet, to connect with EJ.
I'd love that. Yeah.
So it sounds to me, I was going to ask you, Daisy, about one of the things you touched on in your recent performance, the Pigspurt's daughter play, about where you described your father's role as a goad.
Goda, yes.
A goader, yeah. And I was going to ask whether he's still a goad for you, or whether that's now not needed anymore somehow.
Well, in a way, this show and the performing of it on the 10-year anniversary since his death is as much a ritual for me. As you know, in the show, I invoke his dead spirit up my arse by mistake through an ancient rectal invocation method known as gastromancy. And then at the end I shit him out. which weirdly, like very soon after he died, I had this incredibly overwhelming, powerful feeling that I needed to somehow eat him whole, like digest everything that I could, his books, his writings, his everything. Like I needed to just eat up as much of him as I could, and that at some point I'd be able to shit him out. Like it was a thought that occurred to me really viscerally, days after his death. Really in that kind of mad, altered state aftermath of a big bereavement like that, and a shock like that as well. And it took 10 years. It's been in my mind to do it. I didn't know I would do it on the 10-year anniversary, but I knew I probably wouldn't do it beyond the 10-year anniversary. So this is the ritual shitting out thing process. Yeah. So yes, to come back to your question, does he still goad me? I mean, he always will. And the weird thing about my dad is almost anyone who ever met him or worked with him has a Ken Campbell who lives very actively in their brains, and tells them, and constantly challenges them and goes, really? That's it? That's all you're going to do, is it? Ah, that's not very impressive, is it? This comes back. Oh, this relates to what I was going to say earlier, which is none of the neuroscientists have been able to locate a self, but he had this notion that you could astound yourself a self. If you did stuff that was sufficiently astonishing to yourself, you might end up actually astounding yourself a self. So this is an attempt. I mean, it's the beginning of an attempt. I don't think the show itself will do it, but it's a declaration that I intend to astound myself a self. Nice.
It really reminds, the idea of having a goad, it really reminds me of, I think it's there's a lot of kind of traditions that have that model, of somehow surrendering your imagined free will to some kind of outside force or agency, or like borrowing their will, or like getting kind of borrowed necessity from them in order to get to the point that you're describing.
Yes, absolutely. And one of my dad's students is, of course, Nina Conti, the ventriloquist. And so she found her power through being able to, give the goader to her own left hand, essentially. You know what I mean? And that relationship's extraordinary because her little monkey can say anything and tell her to do anything, and it's not censored. Because this was the other thing, is that we have these little geezers that constantly censor what we're allowed to say and do, the gatekeepers.
Oh, yes.
And if we can do away with them. So I think a lot of my dad's work was about trying to get beyond the gatekeeper, but again, with enormous amounts of humour. But one of the things he was doing in the latter years of his life was long-form improvisation with a troupe of actors who would improvise for 56 hours straight, one ongoing story. They reckoned at about the 30th hour, you broke through to the lizard brain and had no fear, you went, the gatekeeper shut up, basically. You'd done it. You'd broken your storyteller. You'd gone through to the other side. Yeah, that was one of his techniques.
Sounds fun.
Sounds awful. I jumped off the boat at that point.
Well, it's an interesting model, isn't it? I mean, it reminds me of Claude Needham's Bot Life, and also the Move Act deck, Garrett.
Oh yeah, and I'll send you, Daisy, I'll send you the PDF of Bot Life. It's not released yet, but Will and I and folks had done, I was running a daily training, insane thing where we'd meet every day with people around the world for an hour. And one of the things we did was do this Bot Life. And I think it took us a month, maybe longer. You can remind me, Will, but we were setting that shit up for a long time.
There's a lot of work in the preparation of it.
But basically the book is that, and Claude's sort of a game master over all these years. He creates games, but there's always some weird shit that's going on with them. Books of exercises. I'll send you a list of stuff that I think you'll like.
Oh yeah, that sounds right up my street. Oh yeah.
So, yeah, it's so cool. But
game structure, that's so interesting in terms of story structure, and it's not, to my shame, it's not an area of story that I've investigated as much as because I feel like that is definitely the way the wind is blowing. It's about the game, isn't it? It's about and whether that's collaborative or whether that's you within the game. But that's a whole other form of storytelling, which is fascinating.
Oh yeah, it's totally a weird thing. Like with the bot life. So if you're familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, you have a character and you have tables. So the tables might say they have these tendencies and these actions and these whatever, and you roll dice based on what's going on for the story to go forward. Which is also, that could be an interesting structure where an audience is doing dice rolls to see where the story goes. But yeah, so bot life, you draw a map of where you live, and then you have your basic core places you go, and then you have sub locations like the bathroom. So your location is house, then the sub location kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, and then you have typical actions that happen in each of those spaces. So you're laying out table after table of your whole life, basically. And then you can play around in someone else's life as them, rolling the dice and seeing what happens.
Wow.
Well, there's some very interesting effects which occurred more or less the first time we started doing this, after we'd spent, you spend like a month observing yourself building these tables of going, oh yeah, I quite often go to there on a Wednesday, and you add that to the list of places. Oh, I quite often eat a ham sandwich on a Wednesday or whatever. And then when you then start playing the game on someone else's tables, you find yourself inhabiting them. And when someone's playing on your tables, you find yourself like refreshingly freed of the necessity of the pretense of free will, basically.
Yeah. That's brilliant. What an amazing thing.
Super weird.
I love that. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Wow.
So I don't know if I've made a mistake, Daisy, but I've put my name down for your next adventure, which...
Yes, you've made a terrible mistake.
So that involves a pilgrimage to CERN, am I right in thinking?
Pilgrimage to CERN, exactly. It's all, talk about bizarre synchronicities around this. So this all began because I come across this list in Pigspurt's Daughter called Daddy's Dreams, and this was the list that my dad would keep of all the things that he longed for me to be, and it was his sort of way of amusing himself and torturing me, and it was things like Russian gymnast, Chinese violinist, ridiculous things that I could never possibly be, and so I was destined to disappoint. But one of the things on the Daddy's Dreams list was that I should oversee a breakthrough in CERN. And of course, I dismissed this as ridiculous. But then all the Gnosticism and the rising up of the nothingness and the realization that, of course, in CERN is the greatest concentration of nothing, well beyond a vacuum. This real nothing is in CERN, and so as good neo-Gnostics, we think we ought to go and commune our gap where ourselves are with the greatest God of nothing in CERN. So that's sort of where it began, and then I called up the guys at Liverpool Arts Lab. There's been, I don't know if you know the Arts Lab movement back from the kind of early 70s, really, and Alan Moore had a lot to do with a kind of recent reignition of the whole movement of arts labs. So there's a few arts labs have been popping up across the country, and Liverpool has one of the most vibrant. And I just had an inkling that they might be up for helping me organise a pilgrimage to CERN, and I phoned them, and the guy Josh said, "Oh, we're already planning a pilgrimage to Switzerland." I mean, what are the chances? So it turns out, of course they are, because Carl Jung had a dream about Liverpool, which he writes about in Memories, Dreams and Reflections, and in it he dreamt that Liverpool is the pool of life. And so this poet, we're going back to the early 70s now, found the site of Jung's dream, and that's where my dad staged Illuminatus, and that's where he met my mother and I was conceived, on the site of Jung's dream, right in Liverpool. And so they then went across to Jung's garden, because I don't know if you know this, that he'd in his later years had got obsessed with carving granite, and they were given by Jung's son a piece of granite to take back to Liverpool, and in it was carved, "Liverpool is the pool of life, C.G. Jung," and it's up there marking the site of Jung's dream, which, bringing it back to the KLF, this this is considered such an important PowerPoint by Bill Drummond that on his 60th birthday, he stood on the manhole cover, Matthew Street, the point of Jung's dream, for 17 hours in the rain. That's what he did on his 60th birthday. Anyway, why have I got caught up in Jung and his manhole cover? I can't quite remember. Oh yes, anyway, because they've decided it's the anniversary of the getting of the granite from Jung's garden, and they want to take a gift back to Jung's garden from Liverpool now that there's been a resurgence of this whole synchronic line. So they were already planning a pilgrimage to Switzerland. So I said, great, we can join forces. We'll go to Jung's garden, and then we'll go to CERN. But then my friend Kate, who pops up in my show because she always has these extraordinary dreams that everyone suddenly is compelled to enact, and she dreamed of Damanhur. And she dreamed the Italian community, and she dreamed that we'd all gone to Damanhur en route to CERN, and we're learning a sacred language, but it's a dancing language. This relates to what you were talking about, right? Because they dance a form of their ancient language, which is called sacred dance. But Kate didn't know I knew that they do sacred dance because I've been there a few times, but she didn't know anything about sacred dance. And we were learning to dance the phrase, show us so we can understand. And we would then be going on to dance that phrase at CERN, right? And so I've just called Damanhur. This is all news just in, right? This is all happening in the last week. And so I've called Damanhur, and they've said, yes, come to Damanhur en route to CERN the day before we get to CERN, and learn the sacred dance, and we'll take you down into the temple and all that. So that's all rather good. And then John Higgs, the author, had a vision. He had a vision that we ought to leave from the CERN giant in the CERN of Bass giant. You know the one I mean? He was thought to be the prehistoric chalk figure with the enormous erect cock and the big club. You know the one, yeah? He's the CERN giant, CERN with an E. And as you'll know, Will, there's a big theme in my show about moving from the protuberential narrative to the orificular. And so to go from CERN to CERN, from the protuberance to the orifice.
So the absolute, the most orifice of orifices.
But I said to John, listen, it's not enough for the sake of the story of this whole pilgrimage that you've just, had this idea. We'll at least call it a vision, but even that doesn't feel quite enough. We'll only call it writ if Kate dreams it. So I then commissioned Kate to dream John's vision without telling her anything else. She didn't know anything else about it. And 3 days ago, she did it. She got the wrong chalk figure. There's two still existent chalk men in the UK. One is the CERN giant, and one is the Long Man of Wilmington, which is nearer me in East Sussex. And she was at the base of the Long Man of Wilmington and saying to everyone, we should start the pilgrimage here. So she got the wrong chalk man, but she got it. I mean, that's
pretty damn close.
It's not bad, is it? So that's it. So now we know we're going from CERN to CERN via Jung's garden. Oh, a bicycle day, we thought we might as well throw in. And Damanhur, and culminating in being at CERN on the 23rd of April, which, if you know your Illuminatus, is the day they immanentize the eschaton.
Wow. So if people are intrigued by this, how can they find out more?
Well, we're sort of, the logistics of this thing, as you can imagine, are quite fearsome. So at the moment we're thinking in terms of 69 people. So there's not a completely infinite number of spaces on the buses for this adventure. So very soon, I'll make sure you're in the first round, Will. Very soon I'll be sort of sending out the first batch of the more connected mycelia, let's put it that way. They're just a little bit more initiated into the choice 5 narrative, to see if they want on the buses, and then I'll be widening it out until we hit the 69. I mean, we might not get to 69, but it'll be fun. I think it will be very good fun.
It sounds a lot of fun. And it seems like this has become quite, orchestrating these kind of things after the events in Liverpool. It seems to come kind of second nature to you. It seems like from the outside.
Well, you know, you were saying every time you talk about the KLF, weird shit happens. Like, you know, my dad was another of those. There's a few of them about magnets for weirdness and synchronicity, and you know, possibly I'm becoming one myself.
I think it may be too late.
It may be too late. Yeah, I was being born at the site of Jung's dream in Liverpool may have buggered me right from the off. So yes, it seems like the story wants to do what the story wants to do, and in some ways, I feel like this is really what theatre wants to do as well. You know, yeah, we still sometimes have to, you know, hire a venue and sell some tickets and, you know, go back to that form. But actually, this to me feels like the kind, you know, a newer kind of theatre, and it's more like a game, isn't it? It's more like a game because you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah,
and then the interweaving of the you know, the fact and fiction until it's such a fractal that it's unpickable again, you know.
Yes. So utterly complex and so endlessly self-referential that it becomes alive. Yeah.
So here's what I'm thinking. We're almost at an hour here, which is awesome.
Okay.
So it goes by in no time, but I'd like to usually split it up if we go past that. But something that just came to mind was that we could do a whole nother, this is if you guys want to do this, but a whole nother episode and get specific about theater, story, and performance. Like go into how you create shows and all that stuff about inspiration and kind of share and go on those lines. If you guys are interested, we could do something.
Yeah, I'd be happy to have another chat. It's great chatting to you guys. We're all clearly all very much on the same wavelength. So yeah, I'd love to do that. It'd be great.
Okay,
I probably
cool.
can't talk for much longer tonight because of all that mundane stuff we were talking about earlier.
Well, we can just call it for now. This is fine. And I think it was a good roundup of a lot of cool things. And then next time, and I'll just email you after this later today, Daisy, and I'll send you all that stuff I was mentioning. And then maybe in a week or two, we can schedule another one.
Great. Well, you know, the Toxteth Day of the Dead, which we haven't talked about this time, but you know, the Justified Ancients of Muma were building a pyramid of dead people, and the first bricks are being laid on the Toxteth Day of the Dead on the 23rd of November. So really
my mom's birthday.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Oh my God! Well, it's the Discordian Holy Day.
I know
it's you know it. You know that, do you?
Yeah, because it was
birthday and it's all sorts of things. Oh, great!
Super weird. Yeah, there was even aliens. The night she was born in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, there were aliens shot down or something. A military jet shot down over Lake Superior. It was like on her birthday, and we went to that lake so much during my life. Like, just insane weirdness around that date forever.
Oh, well, me too. Everything happens around November 23rd, always. No. So I was going to suggest that maybe we speak after that, because who knows what shit might hit what fan.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Yeah, let's go. Let's aim for the end of the month then. That's perfect.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, well, super good to meet you.
So good to connect. So good to connect. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I think it'll come together in the future more too. Like Will and I mentioned, we'll talk about this more next time, but yeah, we've been putting on workshops around the world, and those are starting to lean even more towards some of the theater stuff. I find it helps people tremendously, and so there's some common ground where I think we could probably. I mean, we'll end up creating some stuff all together. I think it could.
It sounds writ to me. Kate's probably dreaming it as we speak.
Excellent.
Yeah. Brilliant. Oh, really, really good to chat, guys. Really great.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you, Daisy.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No worries. All right. Speak soon.
All right. Talk to you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.